So we are located in the middle of Gettysburg National Military Park. Today we're going to highlight a couple of the key points and figures and things that you can see if we can get a tour there today. Gettysburg is the turning point of the Civil War. It's a major Union victory. What would turn it to end up getting Union victory on July. The North and the South would meet here. Where 165,000 would engage in battle, and after 3 days have a total of 51,000 casualties. Today we're going to highlight a few of the key parts. Okay, so we're standing in the middle of what is known as Devil's Den. I'm standing in the location of where a picture is famously known to have been staged. There are pictures of a soldier shooting towards Little Round Top, which is behind me, with his gun propped against the stone wall here. We know that his body came from about 75 yards towards my front direction, but this was a location where both the Union and the Confederates had fought in the middle of the second day. The Union line being far behind us, but extended at one point to here to defend the advancing Confederates from in front of me. The Confederates would force the Union from here up towards Little Round Top into a wheat field about half a mile, quarter mile to my right. It's a 25-acre wheat field that exchanged hands 6 times during the course of an afternoon. And this would be amongst the bloodiest portion of fighting between the wheat field, the Little Round Top, and Devil's Den. You'll see many rock formations in this area around there, and it would be used for cover, it would be used for military advantage. It's places that you can literally walk through and experience what the soldiers got to see. So this monument shows the diversity that existed within the armies. This is an Irish setter in front of a Celtic cross, and it indicates that this brigade was the Irish Brigade. It was made up of 5 regiments, all of Irish heritage, almost all of which would have been born in Ireland. This specifically indicates the 63rd, 69th, and 88th New York. And this would be just off of the wheat field. In fact, this is part of what is considered to be the wheat field part of the battle. And a story that goes with the wheat field portion of the battle was a brigade commander known as Edward Cross, who had recently been promoted about a month prior to the battle from regiment commander of the 5th New Hampshire, would take command of this brigade. And the brigade would go through the wheat field off to our right, and as it's coming to the top, it goes up, it swells down, and they start to see the Confederates behind a stone wall in the back. It was always his tradition during the time of the battle to put on a red bandana around his head as opposed to his government-issued Union kepi. But in the weeks preceding the battle, he would tell his aides, and he would even tell the commander of his corps, General Hancock, that he would not be surviving this battle. And he reiterated this right before the start of the battle, saying that this would be his last battle. So as they enter the battle, he takes his kepi off, and instead of putting a red bandana on, he would tie a black handkerchief around his hat, or around his head, like a turban, and would head off to prepare his troops for a charge into the enemy line, into the woods to my far right, of which he would shortly fall and die within about 8 hours. So here we stand on Little Round Top, which has a fantastic view of most of the rest of the park. You can see literally miles in every direction. It's supposed to have one of the best sunsets on the entire eastern coast. It's also a very strategic point for the battle. The Confederates having come from far off to my right to this point and through the woods behind your perspective and towards the backside of this mountain, this would be the extreme left side of the Union Army. If the Confederates could roll up the side of the army, the entire Union Army would collapse. And initially, when the Confederates started making their advance, there was nobody on top of this hill, but the topographical engineer, which is the person who was in charge of the terrain and using it for military advantage, who has a monument on the far side, found this place to be particularly good. You could get cannons up top here and use that to your advantage to mow down the enemy, and it would also prevent them from doing the same thing against you. He found a commander named Colonel Strong Vincent from Pennsylvania, who brought his brigade up here and would end up helping defend this mountain, but in the time he would actually fall himself on top of this boulder to my left, of which you can see the engravings that were made during that time to indicate where he had fallen. Okay, so we're looking at what is known as the Trossel Barn. It is one of many farm properties that was here during the time of the battle. It still has damage that is done to that, including cannon shells that are in its walls that you can see if we get closer to it. We're looking at it because in front of it is a marker to a man named General Dan Sickles, who was a politician from New York. And he had moved the Union line into an awkward position, advanced in that from there. He himself has an interesting story, having murdered the son of the author of our national anthem, and was the first person to plead and get away with temporary insanity for his murder trial. With the Battle of Gettysburg, he was struck while horseback with a cannon shell in his right thigh, mostly removing his leg. He would never fully get rid of the leg, even though it would be amputated. It would be kept in whiskey until he would die. He would die not in this battalion to this day. There's a marker there Pennsylvania. He would be a presidential candidate. During the Third Day's battle, he was also horseback. A bullet would strike the front of his saddle and lodge inside his thigh with the nail from the saddle. Then we'll move to the Pennsylvania Monument, the largest on the entire park, being that this is Pennsylvania. It has a dome top. It has stairs that you can go up and walk around the base of the dome. It has generals and the president all around the base of the monument, and the governor of the time, Governor Curtin. And each black placard is to each regiment of Pennsylvania that fought in this battle, and lists every soldier that was engaged in this battle here. We are here on what will be the concluding portion of the Battle of Gettysburg, what is known as Pickett's Charge. We are standing literally at the center point of the Union line on July 3rd, 1863, after a 2-hour cannonade that morning where the Confederates, the tree line at the far distance, would be using 150 cannons to shoot towards us. The Union would be returning fire for 2 hours. This would create what is known as an acoustic shadow, where you could hear it in Philadelphia and as close to Pittsburgh that you would be able to hear it 10 miles away. After this 2-hour cannonade, there would be a charge of about 12,000 Confederate soldiers across this field of almost 1 mile. And of these 12,000, they didn't realize that the cannonade had overshot the Union line by a great distance, not weakening it as they had expected to do. As they approached the road and got closer to the Union line, the Union line would stand and open fire into them. This charge would take 15 minutes and would cost more than half of the casualties, more than half of the 12,000 overall. And the point for this battle was the bloodiest battle in the Civil War in North America and the entire Western Hemisphere.